Welcome to On the Corner of Main Street, presented by Plaza Hotel and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Here is Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel, Gary Vickery, and I'm your host, Lisa Melmed. Hello, and welcome to On the Corner of Main Street. Hello, Jonathan.
Hey, Lise. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing good, thank you. Doing good. Little excited for our podcast today. I feel like we've not come of age, but this is a big moment because for me, to ask Larry Ruvo to be a guest on the podcast was something that I thought about and thought was a huge opportunity. I'm very humbled that he's agreed to join us, even though it's on Zoom. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to hear stories that most people won't get access to directly from someone like Larry. And I think, we talk about, someone mentioned this to me the other day about there's like a handful of families that have been involved in Vegas that are sort of Vegas royalty and know everyone and connected to everything. And I would definitely put Larry and Camille Ruvo in that category. So very exciting that he's joining us on our podcast.
How did you meet him?
So I met him through Poyu Zabludovich, who is the gentleman we referred to in this podcast many times as the guy who sent me out to Las Vegas back in 2007. He gave me the opportunity. Larry had already had a relationship with Poyu. I don't know through whom they met. Larry is the largest distributor in Las Vegas of alcohol. And we all know how important alcohol is in Vegas as we sit here in Oscar's bar looking at all this. And he's the, I guess, managing director of Southern Glazers, which is, as I said, the largest distributor here. And he actually supports us in everything we do, which is another way that I've been able to build a relationship with him. So Poyu connected me to him, but he's been so approachable, easy to talk to, and supportive. We did a dinner with him with his mother, who at the time was 90 years old, and she had a famous meal at this restaurant she owned, which I'm sure we'll talk about in the episode today. But we recreated those menu items with Oscar and her, and she came and taught the chef how to do it. It was pretty memorable. And last year, or 2 years ago now, when we were planning Oscar's 80th birthday party, I mean, we couldn't have done it without Southern Glazers. They helped us with everything from the production to the cakes to the alcohol. It was a huge support. So he's just been an amazing contact, and he is definitely one of the more influential people in this town. And to tie it back to us, with him making that investment through his Keep Memory Alive Foundation to do this Frank Geary Center, the Lou Ruvo Brain Institute in downtown Las Vegas. I remember when I came out here in 2007 and it was being built, it automatically gave downtown credibility when I could say to people, and there's a Frank Geary building being built over there. It almost gave us like instant recognition now, and that was a huge part to have that investment made down here, not just because of what it's done medically for the city, but for downtown, it's been a huge boost to have that architect, that building, that investment, and it's something that we point to as champions of downtown, as something that shows we're going in the right direction.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Well, I'm excited to learn more about him. Let's jump in. Today we are joined by someone who has done so much for the state of Nevada in his personal, business, and charitable life. He is the leader of Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits of Nevada, founder of the Keep Memory Alive Foundation and the Lou Ruvo Brain Institute in downtown. His community service has led to several accolades, including the Governor's Philanthropist of the Year Award and the UNLV President's Medal. His professional leadership earned him the title of the most influential businessman of Southern Nevada. We are so honored to have him join us on this podcast. Welcome, Larry Ruvo, to On the Corner of Main Street.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you for joining us. We call it On the Corner of Main Street because Lisa and I are actually sitting on the corner of Main Street. I know we're doing this over Zoom, so we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Thank you very much.
And as you know, we could walk over to the Frank Geary's building to the Cleveland Clinic Lou Ruvo Center for Brain Health. So we're not only friends, but we're great neighbors.
We're great neighbors, exactly. And thank you. And last time I saw you was just about a year ago. It was the Keep Memory Alive Gala just before the world shut down. And that was, I think, March the 7th. And then before that, I saw you at the rodeo with Andrea Bocelli, which was a sight I never thought I would see. That was pretty cool to see one of my heroes. You and Andrea Bocelli at a rodeo was quite the sight. But thank you for hosting that event last year on March 7th, and that was kind of like the farewell to everyone coming to Vegas, I guess.
And my wife and I, Camille, it was our farewell. We March 7th was a remarkable evening with Neil Diamond for Keep Memory Alive, but 4 days later, 5 days later, the world shut down. And we think how blessed we were. We had 2,000 people in that room.
Yep.
And it was an extraordinary evening. But if you think that, and as I think back on that night, Neil was a little nervous because he'd heard so much about his East Coast friends. But up until the day of the event when he flew in, we were all quite nervous about what we were hearing, that with this, but nobody ever thought it would evolve to where we're at today and what we've gone through. But that was my last big event, and my last time I was out was missing so many of my friends that I haven't seen since March 7th.
It was interesting. It was at that event where sort of fist pumping started to begin, and hand sanitizer was just beginning to become all the rage. People were carrying out their sanitizer. It was like, okay, this is interesting. And obviously then 12 months later, we all know what's transpired. But other than, you basically said it, you haven't really done much in the last 12 months. You've been at home, staying safe.
I've been being safe. I haven't stayed at home. I have traveled. I'm very cautious. I wear a mask, a shield, a gloves when I get on an airplane. Our business, our charity, our events. I have traveled. I haven't stayed home. Maybe as much as I should have, but I've been very blessed. Thank God. Nobody in my family, and my 97-year-old mom is also Angie. She's safe as well. So we're all safe, and thank God.
Good, thank God.
Wonderful.
Not touched.
So you graduated from Las Vegas High School in 1964. What was
Yes.
Vegas like back then?
Well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go back even a few more years.
Please.
We came to Las Vegas in 1954. My mother and I came out from Niagara Falls, where we lived. We got off the Union Pacific train right about not too far from where you're sitting right now.
Wow, I had no idea.
Wow.
I often drive by the plaza, and I have so many memories. And I remember when Frank Scott opened it. You have my mom's menu there, but my mom actually did a reprise of some Venetian restaurant memories right in where Oscars is now.
Yep.
But when I got off that train, I still vividly remember I went to Fifth Street Elementary School. And I'll give a little bit of history. My father was a limousine driver in Niagara Falls, and he drove his 7-passenger Cadillac out. That's why my mom and I took the train. My dad and mom decided we take the train, he drive out. So I'm at Fifth Street Elementary School. I'm in the 4th grade. And my father got here and he says, I want to go pick up Larry. So my dad, with New York plates on his car, is driving this 7-passenger Cadillac limousine around Fifth Street Elementary School, trying to find out where he's going to park and where he's going to be. And a police officer pulls him over.
Okay.
Right away, he thought he was some mobster. A New York car going to kidnap. So he didn't know what was going on. Pulls him over. And my dad's looking for me. He's, I'm here to pick up my son. I just drove. And the cop says, all right, I want to see the ID. Well, he gives me the ID. It's New York. And he's, well, my kid goes to school here. Sure enough, a few minutes later, I walked out, Dad, and the cop let us go. And there was crying and hugging. I hadn't seen him in a while.
Wow.
But that's another story. But Las Vegas, that I grew up in, was a town of can-do people that if something happened and you needed something, it was always there. It was always there. The casino element was even more important then than it is today. You think of the entertainers, you think of the celebrities that were here in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the Sinatra and the Rat Pack and the Elvis. And what people forget is all those people that served those people had to eat somewhere.
Right.
The locals.
Yeah.
And the locals went to the Venetian, and through that restaurant, my mom and dad introduced me to so many lifelong friends, big entertainers, people that have gone on to help me with my dream of keep memory alive. But Las Vegas, I can share with you in 1955, my mom and I and my dad, I'm an only child, Disneyland opened. And we drove the 2-lane highway to Disneyland.
Wow.
Along the way, every time we saw a Nevada car, one of the three of us knew who was in that car.
That pretty much sums it up. You know,
Wow.
I've seen pictures of what was at 1 Main Street, which is where the plaza is today. So that's where you came to the train, and I never heard that story. So thanks for sharing that. Like, where did you live? What was there, suburbs? There wasn't a Green Valley and Summerlin then.
Well, we moved in at 109 West New York Street in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house with my mom's sister. My Aunt Mary and Uncle Al's daughter is Lorraine Hunt Bonar, former lieutenant governor, and owns the Bootlegger. So that's how the Venetian evolved. We were living in this 2-bedroom house when we came. My parents had very little money. So we stayed with my aunt and uncle and Lorraine, 2 families in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house across from the Culinary Union, right there at behind the Stratosphere.
Yeah, I know it well. Naked City, right?
Yeah, and I'd walk to take the bus to Fifth Street Elementary, and it was a city bus. There was no school bus. I just got on with the cocktail waitresses and the dealers that were getting off work, who was ever riding the bus, and
cool.
went to school. But it
How
was that's where the Venetian started in that house.
So how did the Venetian is something we wanted to? We had a lot of questions about the Venetian, obviously. How did that name come to be? And that's the location where Herbs and Rye is today. For anyone that doesn't know, it's on Sahara.
That was the second location, Jonathan. The first location was at 1980 East Fremont, down by on East Fremont. They opened there. Then they went in 1965 to the location where Herbs and Rye is now.
Got it.
And what happened, and I vividly remember this story. My father came out and was looking for work. My uncle, Lorraine's husband, my Uncle Al, was a bartender at the Aqua Hotel on Las Vegas Boulevard. And one day they came home. I was there. I can remember the conversation yesterday. And my dad and my Uncle Al walked in, said to my mom and Aunt Mary, "We rented a restaurant." What do you mean you rented a restaurant? We know everybody loves your cooking. Both of you girls can cook so great. We're going to open a restaurant. My mother said, "Well, we don't know anything about a restaurant." He says, "I know about a restaurant that if the food is good, the people will come."
It's true.
And 2 days later, we were scraping walls and painting, and they opened it on a shoestring. And when they went down for the licensing, they wanted to call it the Pizzeria. There's never been a pizzeria in Las Vegas. It was the first one. And they said, "Well, you got to have a name." And my mom says, "Well, we're from Venice. Let's name it the Venetian." So because my mom and aunt were from Venice, their families were, my grandparents were all from Venice, Italy. That's how the Venetian evolved.
That's fantastic. So I wasn't here. We've had Oscar Goodman on our podcast, and he's talked about that was the place back then everybody met at, everybody went there. How did it become this hangout place? I heard you had some interesting guests too. Maybe the sheriff would bring certain people there from time to time. Any recollection that you can share with us from the restaurant's days?
Well, there's so many, but I have a few favorites. I mean, Frank Sinatra had been on a world tour, and Jilly Rizzo, his manager and great friend, came to see my mom and said, "Angie, tonight after the show, Frank is going to come here. He was on tour, and he's got this recipe of these neck bones. Would you make this recipe?" And my mother looked at it, and she said, "Jilly, that's not the recipe for neck bones. Angie, that's what Frank wants." So Frank comes in after the show with his entourage of people, and he goes, my mom comes out, and she says, "This is the recipe that you wanted me to make, and this is it. But this is how they should be made, and this is my recipe." Frank tastes them both, hands back to my mother the recipe he brought, says, "I like yours better." And we put them on the menu, and the rest is history. And a lot of people came. But Oscar Goodman can tell you this story way better than I. I only heard about it. He was there. Nick Savella was a colorful character and a Kansas City mobster. And Oscar may not say he's a mobster, but he was an undesirable
alleged.
in the casinos. But he had to have a meeting with Oscar, and he came to Las Vegas. And Oscar said, well, you can't go in the casinos. He said, well, I want to go to the Venetian. He's not going to the Venetian. Everybody eats there. He says, I want those neck bones. I want to go for the neck bones. I'm eating there. So Nick Savella came in costume.
Right. Yep. Exactly.
And Oscar can tell the story. And they sat there, and it obviously didn't look like Nick Savella. But one night I came in, and my father said, you got to see this. The sheriff is sitting over there. The governor is sitting over there. Tony Spilatro, then a known mobster, was sitting over here. The sheriff is sitting over here. And my father said, forget about who's sitting here. Do you know how many FBI agents must be outside looking at this? But it was, it was also a family place. It was an enormous amount of takeout business they did. I could say it was one of the first drive-throughs in Las Vegas, but it was a big foundation of my life, big foundation of Southern and my business, and taking my friends, my suppliers, my customers there.
There's really nothing like that today in town. I mean, there's a few popular local places, but there's just so many. There's nothing where everybody congregates and you can walk around the room like you just described. One of the things I really wanted to know is, I've actually told this story and I probably am telling it wrong, so I'd love you to clear it up. How did the name of the Venetian then move to Sheldon, Mr. Adelson's? There's myths and legends of how this transpired and went down, so we'd love to hear the actual story.
Well, it's actually documented in my mother's book that I gave to her, and I think I may have sent you one, but if not, I'll send you one. My cousin Lorraine, before she became lieutenant governor, was county commissioner. And she phoned one day and she said, the old Sands Hotel, they're going to name it the Venetian. I said, what? She said, they're going to name, we saw plans. And she tipped me off. And my attorney then, who still is my attorney, and my wonderful friend, Peter Bernhardt, I called Peter. I said, Peter, we have this. It's our name. And Peter wrote a letter to Sheldon Adelson and the Venetian. And a few days later, I got a call from a wonderful friend of mine, Lou Silvestri, who I grew up with, his family next door. And he said, would you meet with Sheldon Adelson? I said, sure. I go into the meeting, and Sheldon says to me, I checked you out. I said, we're even. He said, well, what'd you find? I said, well, you started. What'd you find? And he said some very nice things about me. He said, what'd you find? And I said some not very nice things that I had heard about him. This is what I heard, that you're a very tough guy and very, gave me some. I said, but my father always told me you never judge a book by a cover. You got to read it. And I'm here to be with you. Well, we were together quite some time. And he said, well, let's talk about the name. How much money do you want? He said, I said, what? He says, how much money you want for the name? I said, who said it's for sale? Oh, you're going to hold me up. No, I didn't say I was going to hold you up. I just asked you who told you it was for sale, because I don't know that it's for sale. We got to talking. He said, all right, what do you think it's worth? I said, well, I believe these are the numbers. I said, Steve Wynn, I think, paid $750,000 10 years ago for the Mirage Motel name. So just with CPI, I think it's worth $1.5 million to $2 million. Is that what you want? I said, Sheldon, anybody that comes to Las Vegas to build a giant hotel like this with all these rooms and all the staff and everything you're going to do for this town, my father had just passed away, would come back and kick me in the fanny. I'm giving you the name. Wow. For nothing. What? For nothing. He stands up. He says, I'm the son of a Boston cab driver. Nobody ever gave me nothing. And he had one of those little flip calendars. I said, mark the date down. I don't want anything. And that started a friendship like all friendships and marriages that had some up and downs, but way more ups. And I miss him.
Yeah.
And we gave him the name, and he never forgot it. And he was a staunch ally of Keep Memory Alive and me, and he was my friend. And I, as I said, it was a big loss, not only for Israel, Nevada, the world, me, but so many other charitable institutions. And
Yeah, we agree.
I miss him, but that's the story on
Absolutely.
the Venetian name.
Well, thank you for telling us that story. Thank you for sharing that.
So then, in 1970, you created a liquor distributorship with Steve Wynn. How did you meet Steve Wynn, and how did that deal come about?
Steve Wynn was one of my best friends in life, and Steve and I had worked at the Frontier Hotel. I was the night manager. We got to meet. He was the slot boss. Perry Thomas, major banker in town. There was a small beer distributorship called Silver State Beer, but Perry was an investor in many of the hotels, the Dunes, the Riviera, the Fremont, many. And he wanted us to buy this business, and we did. And there was 12 distributors, and we were number 12. And we were really a very small house. But Steve and I had the perception that Las Vegas would be in for a change of not only the demographics, but at that time it was a 2-martini lunch. It was a lot of liquor, a lot of, but very little wine. And we thought as the world got more knowledgeable and sophisticated, we'd be able to get into the wine business. So we elected to take Silver State from basically a beer house, and we started really getting involved with wines. Mm-hmm. And I just told the story, but we were the first ones to ever buy Robert Mondavi wines outside the state of California. The first time he ever shipped his wines to anybody was to us. But there were no California wines on the Las Vegas Strip. They were all French and imports.
Right.
And we thought if we had something that tasted as good as the other wines and they were American, there'd be a story to tell. And we did that. And we were able to do that. But like anything, when I say there were no California wines on the Las Vegas Strip, I mean zero. Maybe some, slot pours, but that's it. There was nothing. And the top, one of the very top restaurants was the Sands Regency Room at the Sands Hotel where the Rat Pack was.
Okay.
And Louis Prima was in the lounge. The hotel was abuzz, and the Regency Room, we felt if we could go there, we had a friend, the maitre d' Al Courtney, and we tasted him on the wines, and he had us taste the whole staff. Well, he not only put the wines on, he had a featured page on the back of the Mint. We are proud to introduce to Las Vegas the great wines of Robert Mondavi. And Bob Mondavi came and met. So now we not only have the wines, think of this. We have the number one restaurant in Las Vegas and the number one hotel promoting now Robert Mondavi wines throughout. And I know there's a Me Too generation today, but there was a Me Too generation then. And if they did it, we have to do it too. So that permeated Las Vegas, and we started getting California wines throughout the Las Vegas Strip. And today you can go to some of the hotels and they have more California wines than they do imports.
Yeah.
He believed it would take one generation for him to give Napa Valley the credibility it deserved as a great winery. And it did take him 25 years to do that. And it's always been sort of a benchmark for me. I knew with the Cleveland Clinic and the Lou Ruvo Center, it would take me a generation to get this going. And it has. And I often think of that meeting with Mondavi, but that's how the liquor business started. And Steve and I were together for about 2 years. And Steve one day came in, he goes, look, the Golden Nugget's a public company. We could buy this and take it over. We're going to go back, and we're going to go back in the hotel business. And I said, Steve, I don't want to go back in the hotel business. I love this business. And Steve went to do the Golden Nugget, and I stayed with the company. It was, at the time, it was Wynn Distributing. I changed it to Best Brands, and then Best Brands evolved to Southern and much later on.
Southern was an existing company on the East Coast that you ultimately merged with.
My great friend Harvey Chaplin owned Southern Wine and Spirits in Florida, the state of Florida, and Southern California. And in 1976, we merged the two companies. Best Brands dissolved and became Southern. And Steve went on to do great things as a hotelier and casino owner, and we went on to build Southern.
And Southern, you said you were number 12 distributor. Today you're obviously everywhere, and we thank you for your support in Oscars. You guys have been amazing partners. Your team have been amazing partners for us in all of our events here. You guys always come to the Oscars dinner series. We even did one with your mother where we served the neck bones in the steakhouse. That was an iconic night. So thank you to everyone at Southern Wine for being such great partners. And I actually heard you on another podcast talking about how important it is to be a part of the community that you're going into. And I think you, to this day, still embody that, which is wonderful.
I'll share a story with you. The owner of the Riviera Hotel was a real financial genius. His name was Meshulam Riklis. And he bought the Riviera Hotel, and he was speaking at a YPO event at Caesar's Palace around 71, 72. And Steve Wynn and I went to hear him speak. We didn't know much about YPO. I later went on to be one of the founders of the Young Presidents Organization in Las Vegas. But during that presentation, Riklis said, it's really important when you start a business to be involved in the community. And he went on and told all the benefits of why. So I raised my hand. I said, what if you start a business and you don't have the money to support all these charitable endeavors? And he looked at me and he goes, well, figure out how to do it or your competitors will.
Right.
Figure out how to do it or your competitors will. And that resonated with me. And from that moment on, even though when we didn't have it, we still helped as many of the charities as we could. And subsequent, Harvey Chaplin came out with a list of commandments. And his commandment was, make your city a better place, get involved, do it. So we didn't break that commandment, and I've lived by Meshulam Riklis' words as well.
It's great advice for someone like all of us in downtown that are just starting to build a community down here to have that sort of guidance to keep us on track. So I appreciate that.
And you've demonstrated that with your hugely charitable contributions, specifically with after your father's passing in 1994, you established a cognitive disease center, which became the Lou Ruvo Brain Institute.
My dad passed away on February 18th, 1994, from an awful disease, Alzheimer's. I took 1 year to find out locally that was totally misdiagnosed. I just told the story, and we'd spent 1 year in Las Vegas going to all these various doctors, friends of ours, customers at the Venetian, and everybody always said it was his heart, his heart, his heart, his heart, his heart. And I was fortunate to know Michael DeBakey and Denton Cooley, two great doctors at the Texas Heart Institute. I flew my dad down. No, they weren't brain surgeons, they were heart surgeons. And they said, his heart's fine. His cardiovascular system's no problem. So I brought him back. It's now been a year. His memory's still declining. And I was very fortunate and through a friend of mine to be introduced to Dr. Leon Thal, Thal. Dr. Thal was a world leader in Alzheimer's. A friend of mine, we're on vacation at my ranch in Lake Tahoe, and he said, I was telling him all the problems I was having with my dad. And he said, it sounds like your father's having Alzheimer's. I said, what? And I mean, it was not a word in my vocabulary that I could give you the definition of. So you have to bring him down to Dr. Thal. So I went down to the University of California, San Diego, UCSD, met Dr. Thal. And after 1.5, over a year of my father being totally misguided, bad information, misdiagnosed, 45 minutes, Dr. Thal sat down with me, and my daddy goes, your dad has Alzheimer's, and here's what's going on. And
Wow.
I took copious notes for about an hour. But it was the most insensitive, brutal way to find something out about a loved one. I'm in a less than private office, people walking around, very insensitive, fax machines going off, phones ringing. And I got in the car that night, and I swear I looked up to God and I says, if I could do anything, I don't want my family or anybody I know to ever go through such an insensitive, awful experience. My father passed away relatively soon from the disease. And a year on his anniversary, February 18th, 1995, some friends says, Lou loved to have good food and drink. Let's go tell some Lou Ruvo stories. And we went to Spago upstairs. And
The original Spago at Caesars.
Yes. On the second floor, we went in 1995. And we went upstairs and we're having a family and friends telling Lou Ruvo stories. And a dear friend of mine, John Paul DeJory, owner at the time of Paul Mitchell Hair Products and then Patron Tequila, walked in and, hey, Paul, JP, your buddy Larry Ruvo's upstairs. So he walks in. Hey, what are you doing? I saw him. We're telling Lou Ruvo stories. Oh my God, Lou died of Alzheimer's. He said, I want to give you $5,000 for Alzheimer's. I said, what? And he gave us $5,000 and everybody stood up. And that night we had $35,000.
Wow.
Well, I wasn't a fundraiser at that time. I supported a lot of charities, but I never did it myself. And my wife and I looked at each other and we looked at Wolfgang and, hey, Wolf, we got to do a dinner. We just raised $35,000. So we decided we're going to do a dinner. Remember how I said it always takes a generation or a long time. Wolfgang looked at me, and in 1996, 25 years ago, February 18th, he looks at me and says, well, I want to bring this chef in. If we do a dinner, he wants to bring a chef in. I said, what's his name? He told me the guy's name. I don't know. He's got one restaurant in LA, but boy, is he good. And I remember Wolfgang putting his hand like a rocket ship. He said, this guy's career is going to go like the trajectory of a rocket ship. I said, tell me his name. I didn't know. So we have the chef coming, and we put the invitation out. And a lot of my friends, I said, Wolfgang Puck and the chef. And they said, who's the chef? I said, nobody knew the chef. But what's really ironic is 20 years later, he comes to Caesar's Palace, and about 50 yards from where he did that first dinner, Nobu opened his restaurant. It was Nobu.
Oh, wow.
So Nobu did our first dinner, and he's a great friend. And it's hard to believe that we brought him here, and 50 yards away is his Nobu at Caesar's. But it's a great story.
It's hard to believe that it started just with a few friends at Spago, and now you have this annual gala that I've been fortunate enough to go to the last 7 years. I've seen everything from Muhammad Ali there to Andrea Bocelli. My wife got a picture with David Beckham. I mean, you've had literally everybody at these galas, and they're the biggest events in the city. Do you think you'll be able to do one this year to make it up?
Yes, you bet.
Okay.
We need to.
Yes.
We need to fund what's going on. You know, when my dad passed away from Alzheimer's, every 75 seconds, somebody in the world would be diagnosed with dementia. Well, today it's every 65 seconds. So the numbers are getting worse.
Right.
And I believe that we could do it not better, we could do it differently. And what I meant, and my wife and I had a lot of breakfast, lunch, and dinners trying to decide how we were going to do this, because I believed our mantra was two words: indelible and perpetuity. I did not want to waste decades of my life trying to do something that would be extinguished and evaporate after I leave this earth. Mm-hmm. And I still haven't figured out how to be immortal. So as a mortal being, I'm trying to figure out when I leave this earth and my wife leaves, how does this go on? So I said, we sell over 100 vodkas, but 10 sell. Why? It's all packaging and marketing. And I never forget this. We started designing a building with some local architects, and they were wonderful. They were really good looking, but they weren't shocking. They weren't a statement. And I believed that I had to have a world-class architect. And we started interviewing. I love Santiago Calatrava's work and so many others. But when I met Frank Geary, he was the guy that I decided we wanted. And there's another story. I won't go into that one, but he didn't want to build a building in Las Vegas. Ultimately, he did. He's one of my great friends. I just went boating with him this past week.
We love the Frank Geary building. I drive past it every day on the way to work, on the way home from work. It's right in the heart of downtown. It's put downtown on the map in many ways in terms of international recognition, and it's a huge statement for us to have it down here. How did you choose downtown, and how did this, you could have put this anywhere in the state, I presume. How did it come to be downtown, and why did you choose downtown?
I didn't choose downtown. I had a piece of property that I bought and owned on the corner of Durango and the 215. We had the property. We were designing the building. And my father's wonderful longtime friend and my friend, Oscar Goodman, then the mayor, came to me. He says, I understand you're building this building out in the county. I said, yes, I got the property. He goes, you got to come downtown. We have this dream for Symphony Park. And I went down and I listened to him. And there was a lot of things going on in my mind, but I go back to that Union Pacific where I first set foot in Clark County. And I looked at that and I said, the nostalgia for me to build a building just yards away from where I first came. And my dad was downtown. I just thought, in great part because of my dad's friendship with Oscar, my friendship with Oscar, listening to him, he's a great salesperson.
Mm-hmm. Tough to say no to.
And he's hard to say no to. And I didn't want to say no to him because he's my friend and I love him. And we've had so many good times. And I said, well, Oscar, I want this, 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 and that. He goes, okay. And I said, well, I want this, this, and this. And then he came to me. I said, what's the address going to be? He's going to be 496 Grand Central Parkway. I said, well, that's a terrible address. 496. How do people remember that? He said, well, what do you want? And so I had to go from Grand Central Park. I wanted 888. So I'm at 888 West Bonneville. So I switched it because the building was on the corner, right. And I felt 888 was a good number. So I want 888 West Bonneville. But that's the kind of can-do you could do with Oscar and Carolyn, both of our mayors. But I'm downtown because of Oscar Goodman, not because I had some genius foresight. My foresight was to build the Frank Geary building. It was going to go on the 215 because I figured I'd be halfway between Henderson and Summerlin and for the people. But downtown is just as great a location. I helped my friend Oscar, and it's why we're down is because
you sure
Oscar
helped him, and you sure helped our small community of downtown Las Vegas. And I know it's probably been a year since you were down in our busy area. I'm sure you've been by the center since
all
then.
the time.
Any thoughts on downtown, how it's evolved over the 30 years since you, well, I guess you've been here a lot longer than 30 years, you've been here 50 years, but any thoughts how it's evolved in the last sort of 2 decades with Oscar's involvement and what's ultimately happening down here?
It's his legacy. It's Oscar's legacy is what he's done downtown to reinvent it. I think prior to Symphony Park and the magnificent Smith Center, the other developments, the way the roads are, Grand Central Parkway, the World Market, on and on and on and on. This beautiful new hotel right across the street from you with Circa, the evolution of the Golden Nugget, what Poyu and you have done at the plaza, bringing events. It's a happening place. It's downtown is an in spot. I I made the right decision. If I had to do it again, I didn't have the foresight that Oscar did, but I would be downtown.
That's great to hear, and we're very excited because the Greyhound bus station left last month, and we're now building a bridge that will literally connect the Plaza site to a pedestrian bridge to your center and the Smith Center.
I know that, and it's so welcome because, as you know, we do a lot of events, and a lot of the people after the events go downtown and they go to your properties and now being able to walk because, last year before this awful virus, when we were building the building with Frank Geary, I said, Frank, it's really, really important that this be the mouse that roared. He said, well, you have to understand, and Jonathan, we all have heavy burdens. But the night before I was going to meet Frank Geary for the first time, I was having dinner here at Southern. We were having a meeting on some legislative issues, and I had Terry Lanny, who was then the CEO of MGM.
Right.
I had Steve Wynn. I had people from the Venetian. And I said, listen, I'm going to leave at 11 o'clock. I got to get up real early tomorrow. I'm going to go meet Frank Geary. And Steve Wynn said, why? I said, because I'm trying to get him to build this building. He said, well, he said no to Sheldon. Terry Laney says, well, he said no to me. and I went down there with the negativity that I had heard from so many of my friends that he wasn't going to go. And I walked in, and the first thing Frank Geary said to me is, I'm not building a building in Las Vegas. And it's a long story, but we got him to do it. And it put us on the map on the world stage for brain health.
Yep.
Now, sometime thereafter, I went to Frank, and for those listening who have never seen the building, should go by to validate what I'm about to share with you. But could you imagine Frank Geary coming to you and saying, well, I got this idea for this building. Okay. Well, what would you say if I told you that it's never been done before? We're going to design it. You and I it'll start here in Las Vegas after he walked the site. Then we're going to go to my studio. It'll be conceived here in Las Vegas. I'll design it. We'll have about 80,000 hours of engineering in just the event space in Europe. It'll be sent by satellite to China where it'll be built. There'll be 555 pieces, no two alike. The largest piece will be 44,000 pounds because you can't bring anything more than that over the highway. And it'll vary. And then there'll be 199 windows, no two alike. And then there'll be 32,500 pieces of stainless steel that have to go in place a certain way. And then, he said, what do you think if I told you that? And I looked at him deadpan right in his eye, and I said, when do we start?
Love it.
I don't know what's more impressive, that design or the fact that you remember all those stats, but that is amazing.
Well, when you have to pay for all those stats, you remember all those stats. And when you remember what he told you, and what we don't know since it's never been done, when it's all put together, there'll be 1 1/16 inch where it's got to come together on the top, and the engineers better have it right.
Oh my gosh.
So you remember all those.
For sure.
The sleepless nights.
Wow.
Well, before I leave, I am going to say one happy coincidence that happened to me. I was in London, and the First Lady of Iceland said to me, we're going to a party tonight. And I was with a buddy of mine, Bill Timmons, who was running a casino in London. And she says, I want you to come to this before we go to dinner. You're going to go. And she sits me down next to this guy in this beautiful house. And I met him and I said, hi, I'm Larry Ruvo and we're friends. He said, oh, I'm so happy. I just bought a casino in Las Vegas. I said, what? What's your name? And it was Poyu. Yeah. We forged a friendship that night.
Wow.
We were going to only stay at the party for about an hour. 4 hours later, he and I were still having a wonderful time. And it's how I got to meet you was through Anita and Poyu. So please say hello to the two great friends of ours.
I absolutely will. And we talk about Poyo on most of these podcast episodes because my opportunities in Las Vegas are entirely down to his crazy decision to let me move here when I was 23 years old and be a part of this project. So I will definitely pass on your message. And thank you so much for joining us on the podcast, because it's not often people get the chance to hear from someone like yourself and your stories and your history here, and it's incredible. Thank you for everything you do for the community as well, and for joining us today.
Please tell Oscar, my buddy, that I said hello when you see him.
I will.
Thank you,
Larry. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. You can stay up to date with Larry at keepmemoryalive.org. We'll be back again soon, but in the meantime, please rate, review, and subscribe. Tell your friends about On the Corner of Main Street, and of course, follow us on social. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at Plaza Pod, and on Facebook, find us at Plaza Podcast. Or go right to the top and tweet Jonathan at Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time from right here on the corner of Main Street.